In a luxury hotel, every sound is curated. The hushed whisper of the ventilation, the muted chime of the elevator, the discreet rattle of a room service cart over plush carpet. But this sound, on the afternoon of Saturday, June 3rd, 1995, was an intruder. It was a single, concussive bang. It was not a champagne cork. It was not a suitcase falling. It was definitive. It came from room 2805 of the Oslo Plaza, at that time the most modern and prestigious hotel in all of Norway. A sleek, reflective skyscraper piercing the Scandinavian sky, the plaza was a symbol of 1990s prosperity, a transient home for diplomats, executives, and the global elite. It was not a place for violence. A short while later, Espen Nass, the hotel's head of security, stood outside the door of 2805. He hadn't just heard the shot, he had, in a way, caused it. He was there because the front desk had a problem. A guest in this $300 a night room, a Jennifer Fairgate, had checked in 3 days prior and had not settled her bill. She had paid a significant cash deposit up front, but her stay had now exceeded that amount. For 24 hours, staff had tried to contact her. The Do Not Disturb sign remained stubbornly, silently fixed to the door. Nass knocked. He announced himself. "Security!" Silence. He knocked again, louder this time. "Security, please open the door!" It was then, seconds after his second knock, that the sound tore through the heavy door. It was muffled, but unmistakable. Nass flinched. His blood ran cold. He waited, listening. He heard nothing. No scream, no footsteps, no second shot. Just the oppressive, sudden silence of the 28th floor. He radioed his supervisor, waited the agonizing minutes for clearance, and then, using his master key, he broke the electronic lock. The door swung inward. The room was dark, the heavy curtains drawn against the bright June daylight. The first thing that hit him was the smell. Sharp, metallic, acrid. The unmistakable odor of cordite. He scanned the room. It was immaculate, almost sterile. No clothes thrown over chairs, no open suitcases, no scattered papers. Then his eyes adjusted. On the bed, lying perfectly supine, was a woman. She was young, attractive, with short, dark hair. She was dressed in sharp, black clothing, and she was dead. She lay on her back, her head tilted slightly. A single dark hole marred the center of her forehead. Blood stained the crisp white pillow beneath her. In her right hand, resting loosely on her chest, was a 9mm Browning pistol. The police arrived at a scene that was tragic and deeply, fundamentally bizarre. They assumed initially this was a straightforward suicide, a desperate woman, a locked room, a gun in her hand. Case closed. But as the Oslo detectives began to peel back the layers of room 2805, they found themselves confronting not a tragedy, but a void. The woman on the bed had, in essence, erased herself before she died. The first puzzle was identification. There was none. No passport, no driver's license, no wallet, no credit cards. Nothing with a name or a photo. All they had was the hotel registration card, filled out in neat block letters, Jennifer Fairgate. It sounded plausible, American perhaps, or British. She had listed her age as 21. Her address was 148 Rue de la Steppe, in a town called Verlaine, in Belgium. She had checked in with a companion, Lois Fairgate, presumably a relative, who was also listed on the card. But Lois had never been seen. The check-in clerk had a vague memory of the woman, but couldn't be sure if she was alone. The detectives ran the address. The street, Rue de la Steppe, did not exist. The zip code she provided belonged to a different town, miles away from Verlaine. The Belgian phone number she had written down was also disconnected, invalid. Jennifer Fairgate was a phantom. Then they looked at her belongings. This is where the case transcended mystery and entered the realm of espionage. There was no luggage, no suitcase, no duffel bag, no purse. For a 3-day stay at an international luxury hotel, she had brought nothing. No toiletries, no makeup, no toothbrush, no change of clothes. Well, almost no clothes. Hanging neatly in the closet were a few items, all high quality, all black. But every single tag, from the brand label on the neck to the small legally required care instructions on the inner seams, had been meticulously, professionally removed. Someone had taken a sharp blade and cut away every thread that could identify where the clothes were made or sold. The woman herself, later estimated by the coroner to be closer to 24 than 21, had no identifying marks, no scars, no tattoos. Her dental work was sophisticated, suggesting a high standard of care, but it was done with gold and porcelain, materials used widely across Europe, making it impossible to trace to a specific country. She had no fingerprints on file with Interpol. The scene itself began to scream at the investigators, contradicting the simple suicide theory. The gun. It was a high-capacity 9mm Browning automatic pistol. More alarmingly, the serial number had been professionally milled off. Acid or a grinder had been used to erase its identity, a technique favored by professional criminals and intelligence agencies to make a weapon untraceable. Where does a 21-year-old Belgian, as so she claimed, get a ghost gun in Oslo? The ammunition. In a black attaché-style briefcase placed neatly by the window, police found 25 rounds of 9mm ammunition. Why would a person planning suicide bring 25 extra bullets? Then the hand position. This became the focal point of the debate. She was found holding the gun, but the grip was wrong. It was loose. When a person shoots themselves, particularly with a colliable kind of weapon, one of two things usually happens. The recoil flings the gun from their grasp, or a cadaveric spasm locks their fingers around the weapon in a vice-like, unnatural grip. Neither had happened here. The gun simply rested in her hand. Furthermore, there was no blood spatter on the hand that supposedly fired the weapon, despite the contact wound. It looked, as one investigator later remarked, placed. The trajectory. The shot was fired directly into her forehead, with a slight upward angle. This was consistent with suicide. The powder burns, or stippling, around the wound proved the muzzle was pressed firmly against her skin when it was fired. This is called a contact wound. But this presented its own terrifying question. How does one shoot oneself in the forehead with a contact wound and also manage to have no blood spatter on the gun hand and end up lying perfectly flat on her back as if asleep? It seemed physically improbable. And then there was the final chilling detail of room 2805, the door. The security guard, Espinosse, had knocked twice. He heard the shot after his second knock. The room had been locked from the inside. There were no signs of a struggle. The only fingerprints in the room found on the briefcase and the gun belonged to the victim. This left two scenarios, both of which seemed impossible. Scenario A, suicide. Jennifer hears the security guard at her door. In a moment of panic, realizing her time is up, she presses the untraceable gun to her forehead and pulls the trigger. This accounts for the timing of the shot. but it doesn't account for the erased serial number, the removed clothing labels, the fake identity, the extra ammunition, and the pristine, staged-looking position of her body. Scenario B, homicide. Someone else was in the room. This person, a professional, hears the knock at the door. They realize they are trapped. They force Jennifer onto the bed, press the gun to her head, and fire. They then wipe their prints, place the gun in her hand to stage a suicide, and must somehow leave a room that is locked from the inside. How? The plaza doors were heavy and self-locking. You couldn't lock it from the outside without a key. Could a killer have exited, pulling the door shut, and hoped the Do Not Disturb sign would buy them time? Yes, but the
security guard was right there. He never saw anyone leave. Could they have slipped out while he was waiting for his supervisor? Perhaps. It was a 10 to 15-minute window. But the most compelling evidence against suicide was Jennifer herself. Her phantom identity was not the act of a depressed person, it was the act of a professional. This was tradecraft. She was trained to be a ghost. The Oslo police, faced with a victim with no name, no past, and no motive, chose the path of least resistance. In 1996, despite the glaring inconsistencies, the case was officially closed. Cause of death? Suicide. Identity? Unknown. The woman was given a pauper's burial in a grave in Oslo marked only with a number. And for 20 years, she lay there in silence, her story dissolving into a bizarre footnote in the city's history. But the case refused to die. It haunted the journalists, the investigators, and the security guard who heard her final moment. In 2016, the Norwegian newspaper Verdensgang, or VG, in partnership with a production company, launched a massive new investigation. They would use technology that the 1995 police could only dream of. They successfully petitioned the government to have her body exhumed. From her remains, scientists extracted a full DNA profile. This was the key. Surely this would identify her. The profile was run through every global database, through Interpol, through Europol. The result? 0 matches. She was not in any missing persons database. She was not in any criminal database. Her DNA was as anonymous as her name.
But the scientists had one more tool: stable isotope analysis. It is a form of forensic magic. Our bodies record where we have lived. The food we eat and the water we drink as children leave a specific chemical signature, an isotopic fingerprint in our teeth, which form early in life. Our bones, which are constantly rebuilding, reflect where we have lived more recently. They analyzed her teeth. The results were staggering. Jennifer Fairgate was not Belgian. She was not American. She was not British. The isotope signature in her teeth was a near-perfect match for the chemical composition of the water and soil in one specific region, the area around Berlin, Germany, and, more broadly, the Ruhr Valley. Even more specifically, the analysis strongly suggested she was born and raised in what was, at the time, East Germany, the GDR. Suddenly, all the bizarre pieces clicked into a terrifying new mosaic. She was born around 1971, making her 24 at her death. She grew up behind the Iron Curtain. She came of age just as the Berlin Wall fell in 1989. This would make her a prime candidate for recruitment into the Stasi, the infamous East German secret police, or another Eastern Bloc intelligence service. This theory explained everything: the tradecraft, the meticulous removal of labels, the fake but plausible identity. Verlaine, Belgium, is near a major NATO airbase. The untraceable ghost gun, the clinical anonymity. When the wall fell, the Stasi dissolved. Its agents were scattered. Some were prosecuted,
Many went underground. They were highly trained, suddenly unemployed, and in possession of dangerous secrets and connections. Many, it's rumored, pivoted from state espionage to private intelligence, organized crime, or illicit arms dealing. A new, darker picture of Room 2805 emerged. This was not a suicide. This was a rendezvous, a deal, a clandestine meeting at a high-end, neutral ground hotel. Was Jennifer there to sell something? Information? Weapons? The briefcase full of ammunition suggests a transaction. The Lois Fairgate on the registration may not have been a relative, but a code. Or it was the name of the other party, the person she was meeting, a Mr. F. or a Lois. Perhaps the meeting went wrong. Or perhaps this was never a meeting at all. Perhaps it was a wet work operation, an assassination. Jennifer had become a liability. She knew too much. She was a ghost from a fallen empire, and her formal masters, or their rivals, had decided to erase her permanently. The killer, or killers, likely had a key to the room, or were let in by Jennifer herself. They subdued her. Some early toxicology reports, though contested, suggested sleeping pills in her system. They waited. Then Espen Nass knocked. The killers, panicked, forced the gun to her head and fired, staging it as best they could. They placed the gun in her hand, wiped the room, and then, how did they leave? The VG journalists found one more clue. A hotel record showed that another room on the 28th floor, just down the hall, had been occupied by a Mr. F. from Belgium during the same time. This person was never identified and never questioned. Could the killer have simply walked into the hallway, locked Jennifer's room from the inside, a feature some hotel locks had, and retreated to their own room to wait out the storm? Or, the simplest, most chilling theory, the Do Not Disturb sign. It was hanging on the outside of the door when Nass arrived. In 1995, the Oslo Plaza's locks were advanced. If you double-locked the door from the inside, the Do Not Disturb light would also illuminate on the outside console. If you just hung the sign on the handle, the light stayed off. The light was on. This means Jennifer Fairgate had double-locked her door from the inside. She was expecting no one. She was alone. This swings the pendulum back towards suicide. But a suicide so elaborate, so infused with the paranoia and tradecraft of a spy that it defies all logic. A woman trained to be invisible, deciding to end her life, but doing so using the only method she knew, by erasing her identity first, bringing a ghost gun, and disappearing into a final, anonymous act. Did the knock at the door frighten her? Did she believe it wasn't hotel security, but the people she was hiding from? In a final, desperate act, did she choose her own way out? We are left with the silence. The woman from room 2805 is the perfect, unsolvable crime. She is a ghost story set in a glass tower. We know where she came from, but we don't know who she was. We know how she died, but we will never know why. She was a woman who spent her life practicing how to be no one, and in death, she finally, terrifyingly, succeeded. The Oslo Plaza case remains open, a cold file waiting for a name that will likely never come.